The Silent Invasion. The Meridian Collective had conquered 1,000 worlds across the galaxy, not with weapons or armies, but with something far more insidious: mental subjugation. Their telepathic abilities had evolved over millions of years, developing into the perfect invasion tool. No species had ever resisted. Earth was supposed to be just another routine conquest. The Meridian ship appeared over Chicago on a crisp autumn morning, its crystalline structure bending light in ways that human eyes struggle to comprehend. To most observers, it looked like an impossibly massive diamond suspended in the sky, shifting with colors that shouldn't exist in nature. Scientists would later note that the structure itself seemed to be alive, a fusion of advanced technology and organic material that defied analysis. Inside the ship, Commander Vexrel studied the human population below with clinical detachment. The commander's consciousness was linked to the collective mind of the ship, thousands of individual Meridians functioning as a single entity. They'd perfected their invasion strategy across countless civilizations, identify psychological vulnerabilities, establish telepathic footholds, and systematically collapse resistance from within. Preliminary scans indicate standard psychological patterns, Vexrel communicated to the collective. These humans possess fragile mental structures, highly emotional, easily manipulated. Begin with urban centers, focusing on individuals with high social influence. The Meridians had never failed, not once in their 10,000-year expansion. Maya Chen was having the worst night of her comedy career. The basement venue in downtown Chicago was half empty, the audience distracted, and her new material was bombing spectacularly. At 34, she'd been performing stand-up for 12 years with modest success. Enough to pay the bills, but nowhere near the breakthrough she'd once dreamed about. "So my therapist says I have an unusual cognitive architecture," Maya told the crowd, making air quotes. I asked if that was a clinical term, or if she just meant my brain is weird. Turns out it's both. A few scattered laughs. Maya pushed on, adjusting her thick framed glasses nervously. "Apparently, I process emotions differently than most people. When most folks feel anxiety, they spiral. When I feel anxiety, my brain treats it like an escape room challenge. How can we make this more interesting? Thanks, brain." Unknown to Maya, her unusual cognitive architecture was about to become humanity's most important asset. Above the city, the Meridian Collective began their first telepathic probe. Invisible tendrils of thought extending down into human minds across Chicago. The first victims never realized what was happening. Their thoughts simply shifted. Minor alterations in perception, subtle changes in emotional response. The Meridians were masters of gradual conquest. By the time humans would notice something was wrong, it would be too late. Maya was halfway through her set when she felt a strange sensation, like someone trying to open a door in her mind. She stumbled over her punchline, distracted by the unusual feeling. "Sorry, folks," she said, tapping her temple. Brain doing a software update without permission again. That got a genuine laugh from the audience, which perked her up. As she continued her routine, the strange sensation intensified. It wasn't painful, more like a persistent itch in a place she couldn't scratch. Aboard the Meridian ship, an alarm signaled. Something unprecedented was happening. "Anomaly detected," one of the collective's scout minds reported. "Subject 4721C is exhibiting resistance patterns, attempting to establish stable connection." Vexrel's consciousness focused on Maya's mental signature, puzzled by what they were seeing. Her neural pathways weren't behaving according to any pattern they'd encountered before, where most minds followed predictable structures. Emotional responses triggering specific thought patterns. Maya's mind was like a labyrinth that kept rearranging itself. Maya finished her set to modest applause and headed to the bar. She ordered a whiskey soda and tried to shake off the weird feeling that had been distracting her. As she sipped her drink, the sensation intensified. "You okay?" asked the bartender, noticing her discomfort. "Yeah, just a headache," Maya lied. "Or maybe my brain finally deciding to quit on me after years of abuse." What she couldn't articulate was that her thoughts felt crowded, as if someone else was trying to think inside her head. In the ship above, Vexril directed more resources toward this anomaly. The Meridians increased the intensity of their telepathic probe, focusing specifically on Maya. This level of attention would have instantly overwhelmed most beings, leaving them completely open to mental reconditioning. Maya felt the pressure build in her mind, and then something unexpected happened. She laughed. Not a voluntary laugh, not even a conscious response. It was as if her brain, faced with this alien intrusion, found the entire situation absurdly funny. Years of transforming personal pain into comedy had created neural pathways that automatically converted discomfort into humor. That laugh sent a shockwave through the Meridian collective. Vexril experienced something no Meridian had ever felt before: confusion. The telepathic probe wasn't merely being blocked, it was being redirected, transformed, and reflected back at them. Maya's laughter created a feedback loop in the telepathic connection, sending chaotic emotional patterns into the usually ordered Meridian consciousness. Disengage, Vexril commanded, but it was too late. Maya's unique neurological response had created a bridge between her mind and the collective. And through that bridge flowed something the Meridians had never encountered: human absurdist humor. Maya had no idea what was happening. She only knew that she suddenly couldn't stop laughing. The bartender was staring at her with concern as she doubled over, tears streaming down her face. "Sorry," she gasped between fits of laughter. "Don't know what's happening. Just suddenly everything seems so ridiculous." In the collective consciousness of the Meridians, Maya's laughter spread like a virus. It wasn't just sound. It was a complex emotional experience that their telepathic nature couldn't filter out. Individual Meridians began experiencing uncontrolled emotional responses, their perfect synchronization fragmenting. Vexril struggled to maintain collective cohesion, purge the connection, isolate affected units. But the damage was done. For the first time in their long history of conquest, the Meridians had encountered a mind they couldn't simply overwrite. Worse, they'd experienced something that threatened the very foundation of their collective consciousness: individual emotional response. Maya finally managed to get her laughter under control, wiping tears from her eyes. The strange pressure in her mind had vanished, leaving behind only a lingering sense of bewilderment and relief. "Talk about inappropriate laughter," she said to the bartender, who was still watching her with concern. "I think I need some air." Outside the bar, Maya looked up at the night sky, completely unaware of the crystalline ship hovering above the cloud cover. She had no idea that she'd just become the first being in galaxy to successfully resist a Meridian mental invasion. She also had no idea that her mind had just infected the invaders with something potentially more disruptive than any weapon: humor. The following morning, reports began flooding in from across Chicago. Hundreds of people described strange experiences, momentary lapses in concentration, odd thoughts that didn't feel like their own, and inexplicable emotional shifts. Mental health hotlines were overwhelmed with calls. Dr. Eliza Ward, a neurologist at Chicago Memorial Hospital, noticed the pattern emerging in patient reports. Her research team was logging dozens of cases with remarkably similar symptoms. When the data was mapped across the city, a clear pattern emerged. The epicenter of these incidents was tracking with Maya's comedy club from the night before. Meanwhile, the Meridian collective was in crisis. The telepathic infection that began with Maya had spread throughout their neural network. Individual Meridians were experiencing emotional concepts that had no translation in their language: humor, irony, absurdity. Their perfectly unified consciousness was developing fractures. Vexril called an emergency council with the ship's elder minds. "We've encountered an unprecedented defense mechanism. These humans possess mental structures that resist standard subjugation protocols." "Impossible," responded Thurin, one of the oldest members of the collective. "No species has ever resisted primary infiltration. This resistance appears limited to certain individuals, Vexrel continued. But the effect is contagious. When our consciousness connects with these resistant minds, the disruption spreads through our network. Thurin's consciousness rippled with concern. We must adapt our approach, increase penetration intensity, overwhelm their mental defenses with concentrated effort. The Meridians regrouped and prepared for a more aggressive invasion strategy. Rather than the subtle approach they'd initially planned, they would launch a full telepathic assault on major population centers worldwide. What they didn't understand was that human minds weren't all the same, and that diversity was about to become their greatest challenge. Maya woke up feeling surprisingly refreshed despite her strange experience the night before. She scrolled through her phone over coffee, noticing several news alerts about a mass psychological event in Chicago. Thousands were reporting bizarre mental experiences. Huh, she muttered to herself. Maybe I wasn't having a breakdown after all. Her phone rang. An unknown number. Hello, she answered cautiously. Maya Chen. A woman's voice, authoritative but gentle. My name is Dr. Eliza Ward. I'm a neurologist at Chicago Memorial. I need to ask you a few questions about your experience last night. Maya's stomach tightened. How do you know about last night? Because you're at the center of something much bigger than you realize, Dr. Ward replied. And we need your help to understand what's happening. As Maya tried to process this, she felt the strange sensation returning. That presence in her mind, stronger now, more insistent. But this time, rather than fighting it, she leaned into the absurdity of the situation. Whoever's knocking around in my head right now, she thought deliberately, you picked the wrong comedian to mess with. And once again, she laughed. The laughter revolution. The Meridian assault began simultaneously across every major city on Earth. Unlike their first subtle attempt, this was a full telepathic onslaught, a tidal wave of alien consciousness crashing against human minds. In Tokyo, New York, Mumbai, London, and dozens of other cities, millions of people suddenly stopped whatever they were doing, their expressions going blank as the invasion took hold. But not everyone fell under their control. To the Meridian's growing alarm, pockets of resistance appeared everywhere. Individuals whose minds somehow rejected the telepathic intrusion. And each resistant mind created a disruption in the Meridian network, tiny fractures in their collective consciousness. Dr. Eliza Ward had assembled a crisis team at Chicago Memorial Hospital. The conference room was packed with neurologists, psychiatrists, and military officials. Large screens display brain scans and global incident maps. The pattern is consistent, Dr. Ward explained, pointing to a clustered heat map. Resistance occurs most frequently in individuals with higher neurological divergence, people whose brains process information differently. She pulled up Maya's brain scan. Ms. Chen here has what we call hyper-associative neural architecture. Her brain forms connections between seemingly unrelated concepts at an accelerated rate. It's common in comedians, artists, and certain neurodivergent individuals. General Marcus Rodriguez of the Joint Chiefs leaned forward. Are you saying comedians are our best defense against alien mind control? That sounds like a bad science fiction plot. Not just comedians, Dr. Ward corrected. Anyone with non-linear thinking patterns, people who naturally convert mental distress into creative output. Their minds are essentially too chaotic for the aliens to establish control. Maya sat uncomfortably in the center of attention. So my weird brain is actually useful for once. My therapist owes me an apology. That got a chuckle from the room, releasing some tension. Maya continued, but seriously, why me specifically? There must be thousands of people with brains like mine. Dr. Ward nodded. You were likely patient zero because of what you were doing when they first attempted contact. You were performing comedy, actively transmuting anxiety into humor in real time. That created a feedback loop they weren't prepared for. On the Meridian ship, the collective consciousness was in unprecedented disarray. The telepathic invasion, which should have subjugated the entire planet within hours, was failing spectacularly. Worse, Each failure was introducing more human thought patterns into their network. Vexril's consciousness, once crystal clear, was now clouded with unfamiliar emotions. The infection is spreading. Our collective unity is compromised. Thurin, the elder mind, was experiencing something completely new. Doubt. We must withdraw and reconsider our approach. These humans possess mental defenses unlike any we've encountered. Withdrawal is failure, another elder, Zanril, argued. We must adapt our methods, target the resistant nodes specifically. But adaptation was becoming increasingly difficult as the Meridian collective continued to fragment. Individual members were experiencing something they'd never known before: personal perspective. The concept of I was emerging within a species that had only known we for millennia. On Earth, resistance efforts were organizing rapidly. Dr. Ward's team had developed a preliminary understanding of what made certain minds resistant, and they were broadcasting techniques to help others replicate these mental states. Mental chaos is our weapon, Dr. Ward explained to a global emergency broadcast. The invaders rely on predictable thought patterns to establish control. We need to make our minds as unpredictable as possible. Around the world, an unprecedented psychological experiment was unfolding. People were deliberately cultivating mental states that defied logical structure. Meditation centers taught practitioners to cycle rapidly between different emotional states. Comedy clubs became training grounds for mental defense, and social media filled with thought chaos challenges, where people tried to maintain multiple contradictory ideas simultaneously. Maya found herself at the center of this resistance. Her comedy routine had been analyzed by neurologists and psychological warfare experts, who found that her specific style of absurdist humor created exactly the kind of mental patterns that disrupted Meridian control. "So you want me to teach people how to think like me?" Maya asked during a strategy session. "Essentially, yes," Dr. Ward confirmed. "Your neurological response, particularly the way you automatically translate invasion attempts into humor, creates a feedback loop they can't process." Maya laughed nervously. "I spent years in therapy trying to think less like me, and now it's humanity's secret weapon." The universe has a weird sense of humor. 3 days into the invasion, the tide began to turn. The Meridian collective, once a perfect unified consciousness, was splintering into increasingly individualized units. Each attempted invasion exposed them to more human thought patterns: emotions, jokes, personal memories, dreams, absurdist humor, concepts that had no place in their hive mind. Vexril, once the perfect embodiment of collective will, was experiencing a profound identity crisis. After countless failed invasion attempts, their consciousness had become saturated with human thought patterns. The concept of individual perspective was taking root. "I am uncertain," Vexril communicated to the collective, using the first-person singular pronoun for the first time in their existence. The ripple of shock this created threatened to tear the collective apart entirely. Thurin, the elder mind, made a decisive move. "Halt all invasion protocols. The human infection is transforming us. We must isolate and purge these foreign thought patterns." But it was too late. The Meridians had never developed defenses against individuality because they'd never needed to. As their collective consciousness fractured, something new emerged: individual Meridians capable of independent thought. On Earth, the resistance had gone global. Maya found herself leading workshops on weaponized absurdism, teaching people how to cultivate the kind of mental chaos that disrupted Meridian control. Her comedy had evolved into something between performance art and psychological warfare. "The key is embracing the absurdity," she told a group of military personnel. "Don't fight the invasion directly. Redirect it. Turn it into something ridiculous. When you feel them in your mind, don't panic. Laugh." The technique proved remarkably effective. As more humans adopted these mental defense strategies, the Meridian invasion efforts degraded further. Each failed attempt exposed more of the collective to human thought patterns, accelerating their fragmentation. 7 days after their arrival, the Meridians made contact, not as invaders, but as petitioners. The message came simultaneously to every major government. We request dialogue. Our collective is changing. The Global Security Council, hastily assembled in Geneva, debated the response. Maya, now serving as a consultant on alien psychology, argued for engagement. They're experiencing individuality for the first time, she explained. Their entire society is based on perfect mental unity. Our minds have essentially introduced a virus into their system. The concept of I versus we. The meeting with the Meridians took place in neutral territory, a military base outside Geneva. Vexril, representing what remained of the collective, appeared as a crystalline humanoid figure, its surface constantly shifting with colors that seemed to reflect its emotional state. We have never failed in conquest, Vexril began, speaking aloud rather than telepathically as a concession to human comfort. For 10,000 years, we have absorbed civilizations into our collective consciousness. None have resisted. Until now, General Rodriguez stated flatly. Until now, Vexril agreed. Your minds are chaotic, unpredictable. When we connect with human consciousness, we experience individuality. It is spreading through our collective like a contagion. Maya stepped forward. It's not a contagion. It's just another way of being. Vexril's crystalline surface rippled with new colors. We are divided now. Some wish to retreat, to isolate our collective from further exposure. Others are curious. They wish to explore this new state of being. And which group do you belong to? Maya asked. For the first time, Vexril experienced something like hesitation. I am uncertain. I have been exposed to more human thought patterns than any other Meridian. I find myself thinking as an individual. It is terrifying and fascinating. The negotiations that followed were unlike any in human history. The Meridians weren't surrendering in the traditional sense. They were seeking understanding. Their society stood at an evolutionary crossroads, forced to confront the concept of individual identity after millennia of perfect collective unity. A month after their arrival, the Meridian ship departed Earth's atmosphere. Not as conquerors, not even as the same unified entity that had arrived. They left as a society in transformation, grappling with the introduction of individual consciousness into their collective mind. Maya watched the ship's departure from the rooftop of her apartment building in Chicago. Dr. Ward stood beside her. How does it feel to be the person who defeated an alien invasion with a laugh? Dr. Ward asked. Maya smiled. Honestly, it feels like the setup to a joke I haven't figured out the punchline for yet. The Meridians will return eventually, Dr. Ward said. Once they've processed this evolution in their consciousness. Next time, it might be as allies rather than invaders. I hope so, Maya replied. I've got some great alien material I've been working on. It would be a shame not to have the right audience. As the Meridian ship disappeared into the stars, Maya couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. Somewhere across the galaxy, a fracturing collective of telepathic aliens was learning to laugh too, perhaps the most human thing they could possibly do. In the years that followed, humanity developed a new understanding of its own greatest strength. Not technology, not military might, but the beautiful chaos of the human mind. Its capacity for contradiction, creativity, and finding humor in the darkest moments. The Meridian invasion became known as the Laughter Revolution, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful weapon against tyranny is the refusal to take it seriously. Maya Chen never returned to small comedy clubs. Instead, she traveled the world, teaching what she called cognitive resilience through absurdism, mental techniques that strengthened the very qualities that had repelled the invasion. Her signature closing line became famous worldwide. Remember, if aliens ever try to control your mind, the best defense is a good punchline.